Hi everyone, this is Eric with Just Add Power. In this video, we're looking at endpoint control of a standardized AMP system using RTI Integration Designer 9. Now, endpoint control is controlling a source or a display through either IR, serial, also known as RS-232, or CEC. And the way that Just Add Power does these three types of control is we actually get the commands over IP. So we call them IP to IR, or IP to serial, or IP to CEC, because you're not actually using the IR ports on the RTI processor. You're not using the serial port on the RTI processor. The command gets to the Just Add Power device over an IP connection, so it actually uses the network port of the RTI, which is already attached to your network, and then it targets these commands at the Just Add Power receiver on the TV or the transmitter on the source, and then we convert that to IR or serial or CEC in order to control that endpoint device. Now, before going through this video, there's a couple of things we have already done. Number one, we've already configured the system with AMP. We've got our report file. We know how many TVs we have. We've got 4 TVs in the system. We know how many sources we have. We know where they are and what exactly we're connected to, because these are the things we're going to be controlling. And then the second thing that we've already done is that we have downloaded the RTI drivers from Just Add Power's website. So we're in RTI, we go to our AMP standardized drivers, we downloaded those drivers, and we've put them in the driver folder for RTI. For the driver that we need to do endpoint control, it's this SOIP console CEC driver. So once you've gotten to your driver folder, it is the multi-TXRX comms driver. This is the one that loads as that SOIP console CEC driver. To configure it, first we go to config software. This tells us the software we ran to set up the Just Add Power system. That's AMP VLAN or standardized. Second thing we need is an IP address of a single device in the system. The one multi-TXRX comms driver will actually control all of the receivers and all the transmitters in the system. It just needs one Just Add Power device to get the information about the system from. So we get that from our report file. Zoop, zoop. And we can choose any of these. So 1 through 4, 1 through 4. It doesn't really matter, so we're putting the first receiver here. Then we set max sockets. We want to make this the essentially greater than the number of devices we have, greater or equal. So we have 8 devices, so we're going to do 8 sockets. This just tells us I can talk to 8 devices at a time. Endpoint control settings, this is going to depend on the type of endpoint control. We'll get to that in that section. And then at the bottom, we've labeled all of our transmitters and we've labeled all of our receivers. So the driver settings are configured. We're going to look at these one by one, and we'll start with IR control. RTI has this really great library on the right side where you can get all of the IR and all of the serial codes you could ever want. We're just going to piggyback off of that library. So we've got a Sony TV here that we're using, and you'll notice that I've got some power, volume, mute, etc. here on the left side. So the way I got these is I just clicked on this power on, and I just dragged it over here, and I made that little button. That's a little power on, but that's that little button right there. So we're going to use that library. And then because we're going to do IR control, we need to actually go into the endpoint control driver, and we need to set our endpoint control for IR. Now, there's 3 versions of IR. We've got the V1, which is what you use if you were doing IR 7 years ago. We don't make that one anymore. We've got IR V2, and that's for 3G Ultra systems. They don't have an IR port. We have an extra add-on IR piece, and that's the IR V2. And then if you're doing Max Color IR has a native IR port. You just have to tell the driver which one you're using. We are using a 3G system here with IR V2, so we're going to pick that one. And we've already set up the rest of this driver with names and everything. So now IR is set up in the driver. Now we go over here to our IR control. And really we just need to take this command that's a little red C up here, and we just need to move it into the IP portion of the function. So first thing we're going to do power off. We're going to right click. If we go to edit properties, under the infrared tab, you can see this cool little wave thingy. This is the IR code. And you could hit this copy button right here, but that's not actually the button we need. So we're going to hit cancel, and we're just going to go to the power off button. We're going to right click, and we're going to copy that button. It actually copies the IR code onto the button. So we want to move that into an IP command. So we're going to move that over here to this button. We're going to go edit properties again. We're going to go to driver command. And now the driver we're interacting with is our endpoint control, the multi-TX-RX comms. And then if you look in here, we got all our endpoint control stuff, but specifically we want endpoint control. We've got serial, IR, CEC. So we're looking at IR here. So we're going to send an IR command. We need to know what device I'm going to send that command to. So if we're in, let's say, the master bedroom, which is receiver 1, we're going to type RX1. That means this button will power off TV 1. If I want to do more than one, I can do 1 through 4. I can do all of the TVs in the house off at once. You can create an all off button just by adding through 4. So we're going to go to 1. And then we copied the command from the power off. So now all we need to do is paste the command. You'll see that IR command just jumps right out. And that's now the power off that was on this button on an IP to IR driver. I hit OK. You'll see it's a C, but it's an orange C, not red. And then we'll just repeat that for each button. We'll copy, go to our endpoint control, send IR command, RX1, and paste. Copy, edit properties, blah, 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 RX1, and paste. So we've got our power off, power on, volume up. The rest of them go very similarly. So now what if we're doing RS-232 control? We got to do the same thing. We go to the driver and we, instead of IRV2, we set to serial communication. And then we have to set our baud rate, so the speed that the TV communicates at. Most TVs are going to be 9600, but you might have some weird stuff that's different. 8, none, 1, those are our pretty much everybody's bits, parity, and stop bits, but you'll just need to match that to whatever the manual for the TV or projector or whatever it is you're controlling is. Now, this is an interesting thing we got to keep in mind. So remember, this one driver is for every receiver and transmitter in the system. And you'll notice on this dropdown, I don't get to choose, like, are some of them serial at 9600, or some of them are 38.4, or some of them are IR. So the way that this driver works is that if I want to do both IR and serial in a project, or I have to do serial, but I have to do 2 different serial settings, I actually need to add a second driver. And so what I like to do is I like to rename these drivers. So we're going to rename this one as the Just Add Power IR driver. And so that will control all of the IR TVs. And then I'm going to rename this other one as the Just Add Power serial driver. And so this will reference the TVs that are using serial. We'll copy all these settings over. So we'll go max sockets 8. We already got that part set up. 4 and 4. And then we've got our sources like before. Whoa. There we go. From our thing, Chromecast. All right, so now we got exactly the same settings we did on the IR driver, with one exception. The serial driver is set to serial, the IR driver is set to IRV2. But everything else about it is exactly the same, which is what we want. So now this is the driver we use for the serial TVs. So now that we got that set, let's go back to our panel. We got our serial control. We do the same exact thing. So here in our library, we go down to our RS-232. We pick a Sony something TV. Let's see, we've got a Sony, well, it's not a projector, so it must be this thing because it's a TV, not a projector. And then we do the same exact thing. We got power off, drag it over. There's your command. We did that for all of this already. Now this one's a little different than IR. So if we look at our properties, we go to RS-232. We see here down at the bottom this RS-232 hex string. So this is the string that our driver needs in this case. So we are going to have to grab this, but we have to make sure it's formatted a specific way. Now RTI has 2 ways of understanding this. They have the hex string written like this with little spaces between each thing. And then if you click the hex button, you get this version with the \x's. This is the version that the Just Add Power driver uses. So we're going to copy this code out of that button. and then we're going to bring that over to our power button. So we're going to go edit properties. Now remember, on just add power, it's an IP to RS-232 command. So we're going to do our serial driver, endpoint control, and send serial command. Now we did receiver 1 for IR, so let's do receiver 2 for serial, and we'll do paste our string right there. So we just got that right off the button. So let's look at that again. So we do power on this time. We go to our properties, we go to serial, we click hex. So we've got the /x version. We copy that guy. We go over to our actual button. We go driver command, serial driver, send serial command. Who are we sending it to? Receiver 2. Or let's see, receiver 2 is living room. Paste our string and go. All right, one last time. Volume up, serial, hex. You get pretty quick at these when you do it a lot. Driver command, serial, endpoint, serial, RX2, paste, done. And then continue on. And lastly, let's look at CEC Control. Now it's different than serial and IR because CEC Control is going to be the same control no matter which manufacturer you're using. They all use the same codes, and then you don't need extra wires. It just goes over the HDMI cable. So we'll look at it kind of like IR and RS-232, but it's a little bit simpler. So first thing, the IR and serial driver, we don't need a third driver for CEC because it doesn't use any of the ports on the just add power device. It just uses the HDMI port. So we don't have to set a specific mode. It's always on. So we're done with that guy. Then the second thing is that these commands are pretty much just built into the just add power device. So we're not pulling them from a library. We don't have to copy it out of RTIs. We just already built in. So we go straight to our power button. We go to our driver command. And it just doesn't matter if we use the IR or the serial. We'll just use the serial, be consistent. And we're going to do CEC. We'll do a standard command and then advanced. There's a little difference between them. So we're going to do standard. And we're on receiver 3 at this point. And so the standard commands are TV on, TV off, and pick HDMI 1. Those are the commands we find are most reliable. So if I want to, this is the off power button, I'm going to do display off. It doesn't really matter what kind of TV it is or who manufactures it. The off is the off for everybody. So we do that and we do OK. And that one's done. Now for the power button, we kind of do the same thing. We're going to go driver command, serial driver still, CEC standard, and RX3, and display on. Boop. And then we're just going to skip all these, and we're going to go down to the TV. That's our HDMI input. We go serial driver again, endpoint, CEC standard. We do just select HDMI 1. Again, receiver 3. So we've done those 3. Now you'll notice I kind of skipped the volume commands. It's because volume really doesn't really work in CEC. TV volume doesn't really respond to CEC the way we'd like to. The commands technically exist, but we haven't been able to get them to show up. But if you were able to find a TV that responded to volume, we treat it slightly differently because volume is not one of our built-in commands. So we go to our serial driver, endpoint. Now we do CEC advanced in this case. So we still need to say, where's it going? It's going to RX3. And then we'd have to type whatever the string is for it. So let's pull that guy up. We've got our volume up command. Pull that from here. And we'll go back and we'll paste. And then just the thing about just add power is instead of these little colons, we need them to be spaces. So there's our volume up command on that one. Go to our volume down command, another advanced, RX3. Go back to our program, volume down, book. Copy that, book. Make those spaces. And then our mute button, same idea. Actually, we just copy, paste command, save me a bunch of headache, and mute, book. Actually, it just changes that to a 43, right? Yep, 42 to 43. All right, and now we've got volume up, volume down, mute on the custom CEC option through just add power. And all that's left to do is push it to the processor. So we do our updates. I already did that because it takes a while. Go to our panel and endpoint control. And we've got our not us buttons, the ones we got from the library, but we've got our TV here. And wow, they don't. All right, there we go. Volume up, 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 down, 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 down. Mute. All right. And we're good to go. So we've looked at how to add just add power endpoint drivers to the system, how to configure them to get the proper mode out of them for IR, RS-232, and CEC, and how to use the RTI library to modify those commands to be IP to IR, IP to serial, IP to CEC commands. If you have any further questions or need any assistance, please feel free to reach out to us at support, and thanks for watching.